All right, we should be live. Yep, yep. Maybe is it live? There it is. All right, we are live. Hello, hello. This is Stone Guy 223. Appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. Got almost a full house this evening, so we'll do some quick introductions from my left. We've got Mr. Edge 4006. He's muted, and
Mopari.
next to him we've got Edwin. No, you forgot your channel name. What's your?
Zombie Master Ed 25.
All right. And then we've got gun websites.
Howdy, thanks for the invite.
Thanks for joining. And Just Dano.
Thank you. Now appearing as Tori.
And we've got Kelly. Kelly, do you have a channel? Like a channel name?
You're muted.
I am muted. Yes, that, messes up me talking. My channel is just Kelly M. I have done a couple of gun reviews, but mostly I do chats, and I happen to have been missing Stone Guy, so when I saw the invite, I had to join.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Thank you very much. Next, we've got the Tack Daddy.
It's time for a takeover.
There we go.
Brought to you tonight by Stone Guy
Viridian Green Lasers.
and Nestle Toll House Cookies. Why not go home and mix out a batch tonight?
And then we got Mr. Cork 71.
Hey guys, won't be new tonight.
And so this evening's chat, I'll be watching the I'll be watching gun channels for any comments or questions, suggestions even. But something I want to talk about tonight primarily is going to be optics and how to properly mount them on your weapon and how to properly sight them. And the reason I wanted to talk about this is because I was absolutely horrified at the range. I shot a match Sunday and then went to the long range rifle range after that to mess around with my AR a little bit. And there was this guy here that had a 300 Win Mag. It was a Tikka, which is a pretty nice rifle. I mean, for what it is. So he had a nice Tikka, 300 Win Mag. He was talking about the fact that he was going to Wyoming, I think, for a hunt, a paid hunt. You know, he's spending some money, and he wanted to sight in his rifle. And the guy was obviously kind of an amateur, and so he was asking for some help from a couple of the guys, myself included, that were on the range. And the guy had a illuminated NC Star 3x9
Oh shit!
rifle scope, and
On what weapon?
on a 300 Win Mag on a Tikka. Tikka's about a maybe $800 gun.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not cheap. They're decent rifles.
I have something similar like that on a 22, and it suits just fine.
Right.
Anything
On a
more
22.
than that,
Exactly.
come on.
Well, the guy's over there trying to sight in this rifle, and the first mistake, and we're all kind of, because it's always that awkward moment where you know someone's like totally doing it wrong, but you feel you don't want to come across like a dick or like really impose on them or insert yourself into their situation, but
Hey, you're doing it wrong.
standing back, you're like, this guy's got his rifle clamped into a lead sled, and it's obviously too low because his body positioning is way awkward, and he just can't get the rifle sighted, and he's shooting, can't even get it on paper. So anyway, we went over there, fixed him up, but he's still shooting an NC Star, and he told us that he'd taken off a Leupold scope off of that rifle because the guy at the gun shop said that he couldn't get it to bore sight, and so the guy at the gun shop took his Leupold off and mounted a NC Star, sold him an NC Star and mounted it for him. His mounts were crooked, the scope was canted, and we were all just...
How you bore sight an NC Star.
Oh, dude, it was horrible. So it just got me thinking, kind of, an inspired topic for tonight's chat was, if you guys see that kind of stuff, kind of go over proper optics for the caliber of weapon. Because even after we got the guy fixed up, we all broke our tools out. We took apart his mounts. We reseated it, Loctited it, got it level, and we got the thing sighted. But then after a couple shots, it was walking, and we figured out it was just the recoil from that round. 300 Win Mag was just rocking that scope. That scope was not rated to handle that type of recoil, and so we ended up. We spent like an hour with this guy, and ended up. The ultimate conclusion was that this guy was going to have to go buy a new scope, and I think and he'd spent. I think he said $150 on that scope. So he's basically. Unless he's got another rifle to put it on, he's basically just wasted not only time, ammunition, and $150 for a shitty scope.
Got ripped off.
So that was just made me curious, and made me want to bring up the topic and maybe hopefully help some people out there that may listen to this chat or this podcast in the future. So that was the introduction. That was a pretty long introduction to the chat, but that was my story. So, how do you guys go about choosing an optic for your rifle? We know G-Webs. He doesn't shoot. He doesn't believe in optics. What's your theory on that, G-Webs?
Well, when you're talking, we have to start saying magnified optics or red dots. I don't usually put red dots on my intermediate rifles, ones that are going out to 100 yards or 200 yards, but after 300 yards, I definitely like magnification. But I'm no long-range shooter. I can and occasionally do, but I don't own a lot of equipment to do so.
Right. So for all of us here, I guess a better question would be, do you guys own a rifle that you have a magnified optic on? We'll cover magnified optics first.
The Spark comes with a little deal you screw in there. It gives you some magnification, but it's not real. It's not very good. Spark Vortex or the Vortex Spark.
That's a red dot. We're talking like a reticle, like an actual crosshair optics scope.
Magnified
scope.
Optics, like something that amplifies the vision.
I don't want to play your game. All right.
What's that option next to your thumbnail picture there?
Yeah. Right. Anybody else
I do.
What do you got?
I like optics.
I got a Vortex Diamondback scope. A lot of people told me it's a good scope for beginners. It's accurate. It's covered by warranty. So if you break it, they'll fix it, and it's pretty simple. Crosshairs. And it's pretty dang good. It's really good. The problem I'm having with it though is not the scope itself, is the mount I chose, which is the Prepper QD mount. It's too low.
Okay, yeah, that's we can touch on that real quick since you brought that up. I think that's a fairly important.
It pays to spend more than $50 on mounts.
Oh, definitely. Honestly, that's almost more important than the actual optic. Sometimes is the mount, because if you don't have a good solid mount, then you're never gonna, get. Well, you might get 0. You're never gonna hold 0. You know.
Do you guys recommend using Loctite on the screws on mounts?
I do.
Definitely. I use Loctite. I use red Loctite to actually screw the base into the, like a, where the screws are actually in the receiver, where it's drilled and tapped, whether you're putting on a, Picatinny riser, or whether you got just a straight, like a standard scope rings that everybody's familiar with. Those, the first, a standard scope rings have 2 pieces. Your bases that screw onto the actual firearm. And those are the ones that I actually red Loctite onto the firearm. And then, so you got your bases, and then once you mount your optic, and I highly recommend people investing in the little leveler. I think Wheeler makes them. They're little level. It's a 2-piece level system. Little bubble levels. They're not, $10-15 at the most, but those will save you a ton of time and frustration if you have those, to make sure your scope is level to the firearm. And then, so once you got that, then the top part, I blue Loctite those once you, and the way I do it, and I'm sure everybody's somewhat familiar, when you put your top on, you can, just don't tighten it down all the way, and that gives you an opportunity to turn the scope, to to level it out or push it forward or backwards for the eye relief. And then the most important thing you want to keep an eye on when you're tightening down the screws is to try to keep them even. There'll generally be a little space between the base and the top of the rings, and you want to, go back and forth. Right, you want to go back and forth and make sure that space is even. You don't want to have one side almost touching and then a big gap on the other side.
Okay, so I'm glad I jumped into your chat because I know nothing about any of this. And I'm going to ask really a very stupid question, I'm sure, right off the bat. And that's not what is a scope, because I do know what that is. Why the 2 different colors of Loctite? Do they do different things?
Yeah, the red.
That's a great question.
That is a great question. The red Loctite is a more permanent Loctite. It's red is like super tough, Loctite. And then the blue Loctite, it still works, but the blue is, you can unscrew the blue.
Yeah, the red, you got to put heat to it.
Right.
Okay.
So you can adjust the blue more easily than you can the red. Once you put the red on there, you pretty much, that's in place. And the whole purpose for Loctite is to make sure that your screws don't back out.
Okay.
Under sustained recoil, or just everyday, just normal wear and tear in and out of, your rifle case, your safe or whatnot.
Yeah, I know Mike uses Loctite on some parts of our guns, and I didn't even know there was other colors, and so that explains that to me.
Right, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I would have never thought to explain that, because some people may not have been aware that there was a red and a blue. So always, red is for like permanent fixtures. I would always say, like, if it's something you're gonna put on there and leave on there, I would use red. Blue is for a fixture that you may change out or may adjust in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Oh yeah.
Can I butt in?
Please do.
Also, which is weird, I don't know what it is, the red and the blue Loctite inside are opposite colors. So red is blue and blue is red on the inside.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. So it's confusing as well.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Tac Daddy just put in here in the side torque wrench. Again, Wheeler. Wheeler makes a preset torque wrench that is, I think, it's not necessarily a must, but it'll, especially when you get into more expensive optics and rifles. Why not err on the side of caution? You'd hate to, over torque some scope rings and damage a damn Night Force scope or something like that. So the torque wrenches can be preset for a certain poundage. Usually specified by the manufacturer, and so you set the poundage on there, and then you screw the screw in until the torque wrench clicks. Then you have the exact poundage on the screws. So I have one. I don't use it as much as I should, but I definitely think they're a good tool to have, especially if you plan on doing any type of gunsmithing in general.
Aren't there some mounts, or I don't know about scope rings, but mounts in general that have like clutches built into them, so you don't over-torque them?
Oh yeah, like the little recessed areas. Is that what you're talking about?
No, like when you're tightening them up, you can't over tighten them because they'll start the clutch, and they will start giving you that kind of like gearing sound. Then that kind of like a gas cap when you start clicking it too hard.
I see what you're saying.
It'll be called a clutch.
So Robbie asked a good question there. Robbie from the chat asked if is Loctite necessary if the screws are torqued correctly. To me, I mean, even if the screw is tightened correctly, for me, I think there's always the possibility of a screw working its way out over time. I don't know what the percentage is. It would totally be a hypothetical number, but you got to think of anything that screws in can obviously, back itself out under the proper or under the certain circumstances, especially with recoil. And I guess again that would depend on if it was a 22. Not much recoil would be less chance versus something like an AR-15 or an AK that's a more violent recoil and something that you can shoot 30 rounds pretty fast and get that inertia going in such a rhythm that the screw could start to work its back itself out. So I always use Loctite. That's just a personal preference. Hell, I know that people will say that, they've mounted optics for years before Loctite was ever available and they didn't have any issues. So for me, it's just kind of that peace of mind. It's like, why not,
It exists. Use it.
Yeah. And it's not expensive.
Just throw some JB Weld on it.
Right. So some guy in Sandy asked about the Redfield optics, and funny, I actually have two Redfields. Redfield was bought by Leupold, and so they're kind of their budget line or entry level, if you will. But to me, I think they're made with the same quality as far as the glass, real clean, crisp glass. They're nitrogen filled, they're, anti-fog, anti-shock, good quality scopes. The ones that I have are the, I think they're both 3x9x40s. And let me grab the box real quick. Hang on. So mine's called it's the Redfield Revolution 3x9x40, and they're 169 or 189. The tag's kind of blurry, so either 169 or 189. So, for a scope under $200, I think they're fantastic, personally.
Would you be able to compare that against a Vortex Diamondback scope?
I couldn't, because I've never had any experience with a Vortex. I could compare it to like a Nikon. I have a Nikon M556 or the M223. They make a P, or what the fuck? What do I have? It's either a P or an M. But the Nikon made a pretty cool optic that's made specifically for a 55 grain boat tail. Okay, mine's the P223, so it's called the Precision AR Optic P223, and it's got your turrets are already set up, and it's I guess made around like the ballistic things are made for a 55 grain boat tail 223. And Nikon makes good stuff, and that Redfield's just as clean and crisp as my Nikon. That Nikon scope's about $250. So. But I don't know.
What about the mount?
Oh yeah, let's talk about, because you said something about a quick detach. Now, personally, I think I would say quick detaches are good for something like an EOTech, Aimpoint, your Trijicon, ACOGs.
Red dot.
Yes, any kind of red dot, really. I think QDs are perfect, or a good option. For me, I would never mount a telescopic, a scope on a quick detach mount.
Well, I have a set of Magpul the metal Magpul backup sights on the front and in the rear. So if I don't need the scope, I just take that off and go with the iron sights, the backup sights.
Yeah.
And what I'm talking about is a 20-inch free-floated AR-15 barrel.
Your point being?
No point. I'm just letting you guys know what I'm talking about.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's where it really comes into personal preference, because I do have like that P223 scope I got is set up on an AR-15. It's a 16-inch carbine, and I run actually don't run any type of backup sights because that optic doesn't allow. I've got a standard A2 front post on there. That's the front sight post, but I don't have a backup simply because there's no room on the rail for it, on the flat top, because of that scope.
Can you get those angled ones?
Yeah, you can do that if you want to do an offset 45 degree, but
those
realistically,
not cheap, by the way. The good ones, they're not cheap.
No, they're not. I think
for the set.
They're only
called Troy makes a great pair, but they're $150.
And they're only medium range, so you're not getting a true replacement for the long distance accuracy.
Well, and that's the thing you got to ask yourself. Like with me in this AR that I set up with an actual optic, a magnified optic, a scope. We'll just call it a scope. Everybody knows what a scope refers to. So a scope, I knew that I wasn't going to have to worry about batteries dying. Your scope can get jacked up and you could be, off zero. But primarily, this was a bench gun, target gun, maybe small game. It's not going to be a rough and tumble AR. So I knew, going into it, that I was going to sacrifice having a backup sighting system to have the accuracy and performance out of putting a really nice scope on it.
I personally recommend that everyone has iron sights on their primary weapon, no matter what optic they choose. They need to have backup sights.
Right, and I would agree 100% on it. And that was the key word you said, primary, and that's because my primary AR that I have my EOTech on is set up with iron sights as I've got the Magpuls as well, and I can co-witness through my red dot, onto my.
I was about to say, if you co-witness it, if your battery dies or whatever, your sights are true.
Right, exactly, and that's really what I prefer is a co-witness, because I don't want to have to worry about having to take off. If something happens, I don't want to have to stop the fight and disconnect my optic to be able to utilize my iron sights. So there again, that's just something you've got to figure out for yourself in your situation, what's going to be more practical for you to do. So personally, I do not like the quick detach sights or quick detach mounts, just because in my experience, they never lock up real true, and over time you get play in them, especially if you take them on and off a lot. The hinges will wear, and you'll get a lot of they'll just get loose, and you'll get some play into it.
I've seen some pretty good ones, like LaRue Tactical, and there's a new group called Alamo 4-Star, I think, that make this really cool sights for the mini, like smaller input micro and spark. Even the primary arms one, and they've gotten really good reviews, man. It's I think things have evolved. I can understand how people have bad experience with them, but I think it's something that's really turned into something a lot better than it used to be.
Well, with quick disconnects, it's always about repeatability, over the long term versus a fixed mount, which is guaranteed to be repeatable as long as it's quality.
Right. So.
On the Prepper, it's adjustable, so if it feels loose, you can adjust it to where it's much tighter the next time you choose to lock it into place. And I'm trying to remember. It's not aluminum, but stainless steel bolts or screw. Yeah. And also, if I were to choose, say, looking at Midwest Industries optic here, I could easily put on the quick detach mount onto this. It just, you could tell it wouldn't be a right looking fit. Like, that doesn't go there.
Well, like I said, figure it out for your, what you want to do and what you think's going to work. These are all just suggestions and what works for, for different people and their experiences. For me, I don't prefer a QD mount, but.
It doesn't have to be a QD mount, but I'm just trying to figure out how much more height do I need on this mount to where it's comfortable at eye level.
Well, and that's the other thing you've got to, and I'm glad you said that, because honestly, you'll see it a lot. People will mount their optic, their scope primarily. A red dot, it's not as much of an issue, but while we're still on scopes here, you should really be mounting your scope at the range. You should be. You should have a good platform, whether it be some type of bench rest where you can have some good solid sandbags, or even a V. Like I know I've got this little cleaning deal from the hell is this, Case Guard? Yeah, Case Guard, where it's got the two little rubber V. I don't know how to describe that.
No, I know what you're talking about. You're talking about it.
Talking about bench rest?
Well, yeah, it's Case Guard makes a little thing. It's a cleaning.
A gun vise.
It's like a cleaning station, but it's not a vise. It's just a V. that's got rubber padding, rubber inserts in there, and the gun rests perfectly within that V. But anyway, or like a bench rest that's got the little sandbag. You never ever want to clamp your rifle into something when you're sighting it, and and like I said, you should be mounting it at the range so you could shoot it. So you really don't want to be having it clamped. I guess you could have it clamped in a vise just to mount it, but all your adjustments while you're sighting it in need to be just on a bench rest, or something stable, but something that's not going to be compressing your barrel or compressing the action, like some of these gun vices that I see. That's going to totally throw off the harmonics if you have something squeezing in, especially like this guy that I was talking about earlier. His rifle was a free-floated barrel on a synthetic stock, but he's got the damn thing. He had the thing squished, clamped so hard in this vise that the synthetic stock was actually touching the barrel, which was totally defeating the whole purpose of having a free-floated barrel. So anyway, mount your optic at the range. That's gonna give you an opportunity to get your cheek well, get your shooting position first. Rest your head on the gun. Figure out where your eye is gonna, where you're naturally gonna kind of fall to.
Yeah.
And mount your optic accordingly.
So maybe it's just me, but in the case of where, because they're all the same, mostly all the same. The rise, that is. Would you recommend a mount riser? Or
definitely, because they make, you've got low rings, medium rings, high rings, where it's still a one piece. I would definitely recommend, if at all possible, if you get a single piece mount that would provide you the height you needed, where you don't have to, what I'm saying, like, because they make extra high rings and different things like that where it's still one piece, so you don't have to worry about having a riser on it. Because anytime you start stacking layers on each other, like for instance an AR, like a flat top AR receiver, and then you have to add another riser of Picatinny, and then your rings onto that extra riser, well, now you've got three layers of something that could go wrong, where it's off slightly, or it's not exactly level, or the two surfaces don't mate up just right. And so yeah, if you can get the height required without adding any type of riser, you should definitely do that. And like I said, just check your gun stores. They'll make like extra high rings, medium rings.
I think I'll have to look for extra high rings.
Right. And keep this in mind as well. You want to have like for a scope, you want to try to get that scope as low to the barrel as possible, and still be obviously comfortable for you as the shooter. But you don't want to, the higher up off the firearm you go, or higher up off the barrel you go, the less, for one, you're going to have to do more adjustments, but you're also going to have less room for adjustments. If you've already, I'm saying, like if you're up 2 inches off the barrel, well, from your line of sight, from the bore to your line of sight, if that's already 2 inches off, you're going to have to adjust your scope down just to get you, on line of bore, before you start, tweaking it and getting it where you want it. So when you go out, not have the, you're going to have less adjustments to work with. That makes sense?
Yeah, it makes it. I understand that. It's just smushing my face into the cheek weld is still not enough in order to see the crosshairs. And then I think I do have the proper eye relief. That's not the problem. I just need it to be a little higher.
Right. And are you getting any type of shadowing on your scope?
A little, but when I take it off, that shadowing disappears.
When you take what off?
When I take the scope off the rifle and look just directly at it, down it, the shadowing disappears.
You talking about parallax?
No. Well, yeah, it's like where you get that little half moon shaped black shadowing in the. What that is, that's your eye relief.
Yeah.
So if you're getting that while it's mounted on your gun, then your eye relief is not correct. You should, when you lay your head down naturally, and that's why I said it's important to mount your optic at the range. You can get your natural shooting position, get set and look down that scope. If you see that black hole or that shadowing in that scope, then you can
the crescent
push it forward or pull it back or whatever you need to do until that black shadow disappears, and then you've got the proper eye relief for you. And that's going to be totally different from shooter to shooter. I've handed people my guns before, and they're like, "Damn, I can't see shit out of this." But it works perfect for me. But their eye relief is going to be different.
I sighted the thing on my bench in the backyard with not my vise, but my steady aim bag. The gun rest bag for shooting downrange.
Right.
Yeah.
So as far as, like I said, as far as that goes,
start over.
Start over and see. It sounds like the Vortex, I've heard good things about Vortex, so it sounds like just your mounts and stuff are off.
Yeah, because when I take it off and I tried it on a different rifle, it worked perfectly. 150 yards was easy. Really easy. And that was on a different rifle.
So as far as scopes go, we've covered a fair amount of actual scope.
I got something.
Yeah, go ahead.
When it comes to illumination, the different types of batteries that are required versus not required, and just having extras is a general rule of thumb. If you have a scope that has a certain kind of battery, have 2 to 5 extras. Just kind of a general rule I follow.
Oh yeah, that definitely couldn't hurt. Let's before we go off of scopes, let's ask that question for everybody here. What do you guys think about because even Louisville, before, honestly, the lighted reticle thing was kind of brought onto the market by the lower end optics to kind of, I guess, make up for the lack of quality. But now even Leupold's doing and even other higher end. I just saw Trigicon's got a scope that's got a illuminated reticle. So I don't know. What do you guys think about actually having some type of illuminated reticle?
Well, Trigicon has the kind that remains illuminated forever.
Yeah, it's got the little I just saw one the other day. It had a little green dot in the middle of the crosshairs.
There's other ones.
Personally, I think they're kind of a waste. Normally, you can see your sights anyway, unless you're, sitting in a black room shooting at a black target.
Ooh, I disagree. that little orange cone, or I don't know what that reticle's called, but the little one where it's an up arrow.
That's a Trijicon.
Upside down V. That thing is the orange and the green.
Chevron?
I think they're a waste in the scope myself.
No smash.
Well, what about reticle aside, I mean, we're not talking the shapes of the reticles. Would you prefer to have your reticle illuminated or just a standard black?
That's the standard black myself.
I see. To me,
Wisconsin and every background is white.
Pretty much.
Oh, there you go. That's a great point, because that's, that could be depending on your area. If you're hunting in a forest.
I'm going to say this right now. I've shot at dusk and dawn with my, when I scoped my 22, and I never had one bit of problem picking up the reticle, both in winter and summer.
In Wisconsin.
So I never had an issue picking it up. I mean, unless you're shooting at night at a lit target, maybe.
Night shooting is the only time it would ever make a difference. And that's if you're using night vision equipment.
There you go. That might make a difference too, but I don't think we're going to be doing that, so.
No.
I just think it's another gadget that runs off a battery that could fail you, so I never rely on it anyway, so.
If I had run...
Again, Trijicon does not rely on battery. It relies on ambient light, and it...
Trijicon, yes, but they're expensive.
Yeah. Well, we're just talking about, in general, lit reticles, regardless of how it gets its light. Whether it's...
Sign me up. I need all the help I can see.
Yeah, now I tell you what, man, that Trijicon, the actual scope, and I'll admit I didn't even realize they made a scope. It was on one of the guys that was at the range. He had his 3-gun setup, and I was like, damn, what is that? I mean, because the scope, it wasn't a normal looking scope. It had the big 30 mil. It was a 30 millimeter tube. But it didn't have a bell on the end, like it was just a straight tube. It had the little bell, what I call the bell on the front part where you do your focal adjustments, but the end of it was just straight tube. And anyway, it was a Trijicon, and man, was that not clean, crisp glass, and they had that nice bright little green dot in the middle of the reticle.
Those are the nice ones.
That was it was a great. So, I mean, I could take it or leave it, but I think having the option of a illuminated reticle is fantastic.
I like when I like it when they're darker colors, green or darker red, rather than the orange or the yellows, due to partial color blindness. So, like, I'll be staring at a red dot, like through some of the EOTechs, and it'll be just slightly not dark enough, like orange, and I'll just, where'd it go? Lose sight of it, even though it's right in front of me.
The main reason for my preference is basically cost. It's not that I wouldn't like it, it's just I'm not willing to spend that kind of money.
Well, what about, so I guess kind of fading out from scopes, let's go on to red dots, other optics that are available. To me, a red dot, I guess, well, let me phrase it this way. I would prefer a green dot, because I think we all know that the green is easier to see. It's, Tack, you explained that, well, you remember the Viridian green laser guy, he was talking about the spectrum of light and how our eye sees green like 10 times better than any other color or something like that.
Green in a dark environment much better than it sees red.
Yeah.
Right. So I prefer a green dot, and I think EOTech makes a green dot version.
Yeah, it's called the Clone.
Yeah, but
made in China.
No, I think straight EOTech makes a green one. Not a knockoff, but
I always found that the knockoffs are pretty good up until a certain point. They can handle 223 and 556. They just can't handle the same roughness as oops, I accidentally dropped my rifle because I set it upside the truck wrong.
Well, that's an interesting thing we can spin off of real quick as far as whether or not you would justify spending the extra money on a good high quality optic that's going to last you, that's been proven, versus cheaping out and maybe having to buy 2 or 3 to replace the ones that you cheaped out on.
But if you're that clumsy, you have to ask yourself, what are you doing?
Right.
Well, no, not clumsy. It's just the fact of if you buy cheap knockoff shit and it breaks, don't be surprised. You know,
Well,
it's like,
I'm not talking. I guess I'm talking about if it knocks loose or breaks from recoil. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about it if you keep knocking it down off the truck, and that's why it's breaking. Then it's something you're doing.
Yeah.
well, obviously, yeah.
Human error, but primarily I run Aimpoint. I only have one of those. Vortex Spark 1, Vortex Spark 2, and the Vortex Strikefires, and they never fail, and they handle the abuse.
Now, I've heard great stuff about those Vortex, especially the new ones, because I think they have fixed the problem of the battery button. Like,
But they have a lifetime warranty, man, on Vortex. Even if you beat them up, they'll replace them. That's one of the things that's good about them at a $200 price mark, roughly.
Actually, there's a correction on that. The older models are now limited warranty, because I broke the caps off of mine by, like I said before, slipped off the side of the truck, and the little adjustment caps that cover the slots, they broke off, and they would not send me out a set of replacement caps to cover the slots up. But that's fine. A little bit of super glue, and I fixed up the caps.
The Spark's one of the many optics, red dot, holographic, or whatever, that was used for a little bit and got returned for whatever reason. It just didn't live up to what I thought it was worth for the money. That I've heard there's been several changes to it, not just battery stuff.
Yeah.
One that was 2 MOA or 4 MOA?
That's a great question, and I don't remember. But I ended up with the one of the EOTechs with the 2 dots. I think it's called a something 2. The micro one that's got a 2 at the end of it. But anyway.
well, I
I'm
know.
gonna try that Vortex Spark again.
I know.
I've heard
Get the
they fixed
Spark 2. It's much better than the first one.
I know EOTech is the only red dot on the market that has the one MOA dot. It's the smallest red dot, which is, just for me, that was a big selling point. Some of these larger red dots that you get, and there again, that's where you got to figure out what type of shooting you're going to do, because if you get a 4 MOA dot, when you're out 300 yards, that dot's going to be covering up like a damn man-sized target. Like, you're not going to have any, you're not going to have any real focal point. You're just going to be spray and pray at that point.
I'm shooting Yeti.
Right.
You're going to shoot an unmagnified optic at 400, 300 yards?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, easy. Mostly for just steel, though. Like, standard IPSC silhouettes, steel silhouettes, which are easy to do if you have a 1 MOA dot, or even a 2, or something like a Trijicon.
I cannot find the EOTech that is green, except for the clones.
I think it's the zombie one they made.
Oh, then that's over with. That was limited edition, I think.
Like a biohazard.
Yeah, it was like the biohazard. Oh, that was a limited run.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh shit! See, those are probably worth $1 million now. Huh?
Nah, I've seen that thing still on sale.
Where at?
Optics Planet about a month ago, I think. Haven't checked lately.
Right. Well, that's okay.
So, biohazard.
Yeah.
Medical.
Yeah. So.
But they did make a lot of fake ones, though. Sorry.
So Tac Daddy put over here in the side chat that a lot of guys that are like serious shooters will tell you that you've got to spend, I've always heard at least as much or 2 times as much on an optic that you do on the rifle. So $1,000 rifle, you should have it, at least $1,000 scope, if not a $2,000 scope. So where you guys fall into that?
But aren't you starting to get into that diminishing returns category then too on your scope?
What? No, I agree with that 100%. What do you mean diminishing returns?
Well, at a certain point, scopes are only going to get so good before
At a certain point, you're going to be able to see at hundreds of meters or yards away with inexpensive glass that's not made in Germany.
No, what I'm getting at here is that there's going to be a loss. There's going to start to be diminishing returns on a scope where.
I think that's.
Is it worth it?
No, I don't believe that at all. You're paying for those units there 100%, the technology to build it 100%, the quality of the unit 100%. It's literally incorrect to say that an inexpensive optic is the same as an expensive optic just because they look the same on the outside.
I'm saying, at $2,000 compared to a $1,500 scope, what are you gaining for that extra $500?
There are serious differences.
Come on, dude. Come on. Seriously,
I'm serious.
Okay. Well, I'm suggesting. I'm trying to explain to you. I'm no expert on scopes, but I know enough about them to know that it's the difference between paying X amount of dollars for a Lamborghini or X amount of dollars for a Land Cruiser. If you're doing different tasks with the equipment, you're gonna those dollar signs and the different models and the different characteristics of those models is crucially important, and getting a rifle to be able to shoot out that far is great, but if you can't tell the rifle where to go, then it's pointless. So it's crucial to have an excellent quality aiming ability on a rifle that can consistently shoot where you're pointing it. You have to be able to point it for it to shoot where you're pointing it.
Here, I want to say something to that. Now, these guys who are saying you have to spend X amount on your scopes and it has to be all that, they more than likely are competing with other people doing that. So it's kind of like saying, okay, Quark, you need to put X amount in if you want to race your Honda Civic against my Honda Civic or against the other guy's Honda Civic.
No, it's like saying I'm going to go buy a Lamborghini, then I'm going to go to Big O and buy whatever used tires I can find because they work. They look like tires, they work on the car, they fit, so they're the same tires. Are they the same tires, or is there a thing called speed rating? Is there something about torque and torsion and that kind of thing?
But gee whiz, my point I'm making is to compete to have accuracy and compete at the level of other people. That's what they're suggesting. It depends on what your end goal is. If your end goal is, I just want a gun that I can go out and at 500 yards shoot an elk with, yeah, that's not going to be a high-end bench rest setup like I have mocked up. You know what I'm saying? So certain levels of scopes can get the job done.
Okay, I'll definitely admit that.
If you're not competing, you can go with a lower-end thing.
Well, I don't think it's competing. I'll agree with you, though, that there's different pieces of equipment for different jobs, for sure. And if you're just going hunting to collect meat and that's all you give a shit about, then by all means buy an SKS and buy one of them receiver mounts and then buy a Nexstar, because that will work and you will drop an elk like that. But if you go out hunting elk once a year, maybe once every few years, depending on where you live, like we don't get tags every year. So if your elk hunt is like a big deal in your life and it's something that you look forward to and it's something that you appreciate the getting ready for the hunt, You appreciate being out there. You appreciate taking the time away from your job and your family and everything else you got in your world so that you can afford to be out there. Then some people like to have the highest quality shit possible with them. And I don't dog them for that, and I don't suggest that they have to be in competition for anything. I think that we live in a free country and we make money. We're capitalists, and if we want to spend money on high-end shit to go shoot a deer, then great. If you want to shoot or spend that high-end money and go shoot a dirt berm, the more power to you. If shit hits the fan and we need to become what we have the Second Amendment for, then bullshit. Next are crap. Fuck that. Leave that shit to China.
Yeah, like if I knew. Like, I have a certain minimum level that I can trust my equipment at, so I don't buy the NC Star and that stuff, because, you know, in an emergency situation. But I mean, on the flip side, I buy cheaper in scopes for my ARs, but I also put on backup flip-up sights. So even though I don't totally trust the scope, I do have a backup in case the scope fails. See what I'm saying?
Let me throw my 2 cents in there, and I'll try to make it simple. Is if you're, whether it's hunting or your range, and you're only going to shoot it. This is kind of a variation of what Nathan and a couple other people have said. And you're only going to be shooting 200-300 yards. There's no point in spending the money on a 1,000-yard scope. If you're only going to be shooting 200-300 yards, then it is a waste. But on the other hand, if you
then why don't we all just buy bicycles and pedal to work every day if our only goal is to have transportation?
If you are going to go shooting to 1,000 yards, then it is worth spending that money for. Now I'm done.
All right. Well, I'm still going to say, why are we dogging people who want to spend some cash on scopes?
I'm not.
We're suggesting that you're allowed to if you're going to be doing something extreme or elite or whatever. If you are striving for the ultimate, but come on, we don't buy the generic food every time we go shopping.
Appropriate scope for the appropriate job.
And I wasn't trying to dog on anyone because I'm looking at buying an outrageously expensive scope in the near future. So I'm not dogging it for it. I'm about to do it myself.
Yeah, I'm not dogging at anybody either. I'm just saying at some point there's...
That's up to you.
Yeah, at some point there's got to be a loss of, diminishing returns. You can only get so perfect with the glass before...
Well, I suggest you do some research on glass and then get back to us, Squirt.
And diminishing returns. It's not a car. You're not driving it off of a lot.
Well, and all I'm saying is...
You know what diminishing returns means, right?
Yeah. So all I'm saying is the statement that Stone Guy made where a person says, you must, if you buy a rifle, spend more on your scope than the rifle is not necessarily true in all cases. Was my only point.
I hear all of you, and I'm not suggesting any of you said anything specifically against shooters, but the overall implication here, and in running in through these chats, is that whatever the cheapest ass way possible to do it so that you can enjoy it for a minute is good to go. That's great. Now, obviously, that's an option, but again, you can go to the store and buy generic food every day. You could never eat out. You could never experience any other kind of cuisine except for baked beans and white bread. But does that mean that that's a fulfilled life? And why should we, when we're talking to new shooters, why should we consistently bombard them with this concept that don't go out and splurge, spend some money? Here's what the best optic on the planet is, and here's a model that's not out of your reach. If you want to go out and spend way more money than anybody might think you need to spend on an optic, go for it. That's all I'm suggesting.
I'm not hearing what you seem to be hearing, but that's okay.
Yeah,
I'm just saying that we hardly ever have a chat where we talk about buying stuff for quality because of quality's sake. We always dog on it. Well, that's for the elite. Well, if you're going to shoot 1,000,000 miles away, then fine. But now let's get back to the Nexstar illuminated reticle for $35.
Well, as far as optics in general, I believe that definitely spend the extra money, buy quality, and only buy it once. You can definitely cheap out, but in the long run, you're gonna end up, it's not gonna last you. And I've always kind of lived by the I forget the term, but the standard of buy some good quality stuff once versus some bad quality stuff 3 or 4 times, because you're going to end up spending more money by buying cheap shit 3 and 4 times than if you bought good stuff once.
But what if it has a lifetime no ask warranty.
That's still, I mean, why the
That's
hassle?
a
I mean,
gimmick, really.
my time and frustration is worth more than that.
All right, I'll give you a good example. You know, Taurus has that warranty out because they don't produce the greatest gun, so they have that warranty out. Ruger, on the other hand, doesn't have a warranty on their gun besides what is provided by the state.
Hey, real quick, I wanna introduce Paul. Paul just hopped on and joined us, and Nathan's Armory did.
Hi, Paul.
But Paul, you said you had something to add here, so we'll give you the floor.
Well, I have a 308 AR. I'm going to be buying a 1-4 power scope, and pretty much my options that I've found balancing cost and quality are 1-4 like VX Hog from Leopold or a Burris MTAC. Really, the only things that I can afford. I mean, I could spend $1,200–1,300 on a 3-gun scope, but I just don't see how that's worth it.
Now, those scopes you just mentioned, what kind of price range are those in?
I can get the VX Hog right now off Midway USA for $229, and the Burris MTAC without my buddy's Leo discount is, I believe, $360. So, I mean,
and I just want to comment something with you. I know a little bit about glass. I'm into photography, and I don't cheap out on my lenses. I buy quality lenses, and I know the difference in glass.
The biggest issue I hear about...
What did you say about the last part there, Quark? Sorry to interrupt you there.
I know the difference between quality glass and craft glass. You can tell the difference.
And how the hell can you suggest that there's not a difference between a $1,500 and a $2,000? Name any quality SLR lens that there's a $1,500 and a $2,000 difference. And there's going to be reasons for that difference.
$500 difference? There normally is.
I'm not going to get into it, but if you're going to insist that there's no difference between optics for a rifle and that there is a difference for optics for a camera,
I'm not saying that there isn't a difference. What I'm saying is that what you're gaining for that extra $500 is not worth that $500. It might be worth $200, but it's not worth $500.
That's all right. We'll get past that. So.
All right, I got one. Horizontal mounts versus vertical. What's your preference?
What do you do?
I'm talking about scope rings.
Yes.
This is a question I'm interested in because I've always gone the normal mounts, but I've seen the vertical ones and they intrigue me.
Yeah, like G-Web's picture right now. Those are non-standard.
Those are vertical mounts where the
vertical
screws go in. It's basically sandwiching up and down around the scope.
Yeah. And I was thinking, aren't those a little better than the standard?
Let me look at it. I'm missing. I may be not familiar with that term. Let me look at G-Web's picture here.
It's hard.
Two different short dots in the room mounts.
Vertical and horizontal.
I got you. Okay, I thought you were talking about the orientation of the rings, not the. Okay, yeah. I see. I got it now.
Like what is it? Leopold or LaRue has some of the best mounts that use this vertical, and they state, well, in the YouTube videos that is, that it's easier mounting and it's more accuracy because instead of the left and right, it's up and down. And if there's any vibration, that is. Oh no, I just thought it was interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never had any experience with those types of mounts right there. Now, I did want to get into the whether it's on a dot or an optic, excuse me, a dot or a scope. I know we've all seen they're one piece mounts that are slanted. The actual rings are angled forward.
I've seen them.
I'm not sure if that's just for eye relief purposes to be able to allow you to get an eye relief on a shorter rail system like the AR, or if it has something to do with like the stability or lessening the recoil or the felt, like the inertia or the felt recoil to the scope, or I don't know.
Repeat what you're talking about again.
The angled scope rings. That's like a one-piece base, and they're slanted, like almost like probably a
like forward swept.
Yeah, like a 30-degree forward sweep on them.
I can speak to the fact that I have like a rail on my 700 that I got because it has a 30-degree down angle, and the reason for that is it down positions the scope so that you can have enough clicks. If you just mounted the scope normally, you couldn't get the scope out to 1,000 yards. You'd run out of height adjustment. So you do a 30-degree or 20-degree angle on the rail, and that lets you shoot out further with the standard scope.
Okay, cool. See, I didn't even know that. I was always curious because that's something fairly new, or at least new that I've been noticing in over the last probably 2 years. I've noticed these angled scope mounts. I don't know if it's just me not paying attention or if that is something fairly new to the industry.
Well, the last 2 years, a lot of stuff's gone on.
Well, here's the deal about a scope is a scope, of course, when you mount it perfectly, horizontal to the bore axis, it has a certain amount of going up and going down. Well, the fact is, we all know that we need to angle the barrel up a little bit to lob the bullet in, so it makes sense to just go ahead and build the mounts to where it gives you a slight angle, and that way you can really get more adjustment out of the scope.
Well, yeah, and that's something similar to what I talked about earlier, as far as having the scope as low to the barrel as you can possibly get it, and still be comfortable, have a comfortable cheek well and shooting position, because that's going to allow you to have more adjustment ability the further out you go.
Here's one. Who shoots with their rifle with a pair of prescription glasses? How do you get around?
I don't have glasses. Anybody here wear glasses?
Yes.
Yep, sadly, and that's why I don't
What's
like
up?
scopes.
Well, is that an issue? Do you have to remove your glasses to be able to see through a magnified optic?
Yeah, and it's a pain in the ass.
Do you have to squint and stuff, or is it just the eye relief?
It's normally, for me, it's getting it in focus. Just being able to see the target clearly. With my glasses on, it doesn't happen with the scope unless I'm sitting there mucking around with the
Most people I know... Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. Most people I know, i.e. my family who have glasses, if they're looking through a scope, they pull their glasses up out of the way and they use the optic to focus. They don't use their glasses.
Use the optic as your glasses.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's
the only problem is I shoot with, even through a scope, I shoot with both eyes open, and I have trouble doing that with all my glasses on.
You're not going to be able to with your glasses because you're looking.
Well, if you get a quality scope, they do allow you to adjust focal point for those that do need glasses. So.
Cork, are you near or far sighted? Do you have to wear glasses to see far away or read?
Far away.
Okay, that's the same as me. I don't know. I just always wear my glasses when I shoot through the scope. But I guess I have it adjusted to my liking.
Right, you can adjust the scope. Normally, you can adjust the scope so that you can actually see what you're shooting at clearly. It's a pain in the ass, and it normally brings the scope mount closer to your eye, or the scope, whatever it is, closer to your eye, and then you get eye relief problems. So getting that, instead of getting it right where you want it, so there's no shadow inside, is pretty difficult. So I just shoot iron sights.
See, that's actually something I do differently. When I get on a scope, I at the range for target practice, I actually read a thing, and I've been trying it where I'll get the scope where I'm looking through it, and then I'll back up to where I get some of the darkness around the edges and that way I can center the darkness to make sure I'm looking straight down the scope.
I never saw that, but
not many people do it, but I saw it on a video where a person talked about doing it, and I've tried it, and it works fine. But I know that I'm looking down the scope dead center because the circle, is in the center.
Are you trying to get a greater length of sight?
No, I'm just trying to make sure that there's two ways to make sure that you always look through the scope the same way. One way is to put something on it so your cheek's always in the same place, so you have the exact same cheek well, therefore your eye's looking straight down the scope. Or if you back up away from the scope, getting the black around the edges, reducing the scope field of vision to 50%, then you just center the circle and you're always looking down the center of the scope bore. So it's just a little trick for target practice, just for range work.
Yeah, I've never tried that, but that brings you to a next kind of topic I wanted to touch on as far as proper sighting of your scope.
This is fascinating.
Yeah, so that's to me, like, especially with AR-15s, like, I generally will sight my AR in to the primary distance that I know I'm going to be shooting. I mean, that sounds like common sense, but there's a lot of people that are subject, or they don't have a range available to them. Say if you know most of your shooting is going to be at 200 yards, well, they only have a 50-yard range available to them. So
that works for 308. I run 5200 on my AR all the time.
That's the kind of problems I run into.
My AR-10, 50 yards is 200 yards. Dead on.
And 25 is 100.
Exactly.
Yeah, but have you ever tested it? Oh, you got to be low at 25 to hit at 100.
I mean, it's a mathematical thing, Stone.
No. 308, for example, Stone, will shoot, if you're dead on at 50, you're dead on at 200 because of the ballistics of the round.
Yep.
You're actually high at 100. You're hitting high.
Yeah, well, yeah, because you got your, as the bullet is going through the arc, you got your bore at, your barrel line and your, what do they call that? Your line of sight. Right.
Yeah.
So, but at for instance, a 55 grain 223 or 5.56, if you sight in for 100 yard zero, you need to be about 2 inches low at 25 yards.
Actually, believe it or not, I did a lot of research with this for 308, and I think I have a 5.56 graph somewhere. There's a specific way to do it where ranges will repeat. For example, my 147 grain 308 is 50 and 200, and I think somebody already said it, but I think 25 is the same as 100.
No,
so if you're dead on at 25, you're dead on at 100.
Maybe for a 3.8, not for a 5.56.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the 5.56 is, but I can find it.
I can tell you that the standard military with the standard sights, meaning open sights where they're up high, way above the bore axis, 25 meters equates to 300 meters because you're talking a good extra inch.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. That's what I sighted in for.
Exactly. That's what I did. 26 yards will hit you dead on at 300.
But here's the real question. Whatever you sighted in at, does anyone ever go and then take it to other shorter ranges and see where it actually hits? Because most people sight it in at 100 and then they go hunting and shoot something way closer.
Exactly.
They hit low and they don't realize that's going to happen.
Exactly. Because you got to figure and people, I hate when people say your bullet rises. Your fucking bullet does not rise. A bullet does not defy gravity and take off like an airplane. It's the scope or your dot or whatever is angled in such a fashion that when you pull that trigger, your barrel is actually angled. So when you're looking through a scope and your crosshairs on the target, well, your line of sight and your actual bore are obviously, just from the pure mounting is generally about a 2-inch difference from the scope to the to the end of your barrel. And when that bullet's going to cross at different points, like when that bullet leaves the barrel, it's arcing, and it's going to come back across to your line of sight at different yardage. Like you said, at 50 yards, it'll cross, and then at 300 yards, it'll cross, or at 200 rather. He said it will cross again your actual line of sight. Well, anything in between that is where you're going to have your difference, whether it's going to be high or low, as it impacts a target between those 2 points of the lines crossing again. So I think it's extremely important once you've sighted a rifle in to do it, especially if you're going to take the time and the effort to make up like a little, like a little ballistics card, where you take it to 75 yards or 80, or 50 yards, 25 yards, and see where your round's hitting. And it's not going to be.
Hey, Stone.
Yeah.
62 grain for 5.56 is a 50 and 200. 50 yards and 200 yards. It's exactly the same.
As your 308?
Yep. Well, no. That's just, I'm looking at a 5.56 graph. I can put the link up if you want.
No, but you said your 308.
It hits dead on at 50 and then hits dead, falls back, or comes back down at 200.
Right.
That's what you said your 308 did. So
this is a.
No, his 308 does 25 yards and.
No, my 308 does 50 and 200, but that's with a 147. A 62 grain 5.56 is exactly the same at 50 and 200.
Okay, so that's what I was saying. So it's the exact same as your 308.
Little bit, yeah, it varies a little bit depending on bullet weight, but it's not going to be that drastic. It's going to be quarter inch, half inch.
Right. Well, that's the thing I've noticed on my AR. Like I've sighted in, I did a 300-yard zero because even at 20, if I bring it in real close and shoot 25 yards, I'm still only going to be about 4 inches off. So for me, shooting paper or steel, I'm still within that A zone, So 4 inches in a target capacity or a competition setting is perfect. Now if you're hunting, 4 or 5 inches could be the difference between a heart shot and your animal running off or you missing under the belly. If you're talking about a deer.
Here's the common folklore with hunters, and the reason why it works is they always say at 100 yards, shoot 1.5 inches high. And what that does is it basically sets the rifle to a 200-yard zero. And so, when you shoot the bullet, you're 1.5 inches low from bore to scope. So you start off 1.5 inches low, it rises up as it's going out to 100, goes up high, hits 1.5 inches high, and then drops back down to 200. And then past 200 out to 250, it drops another 3 inches roughly. So between 0 and 250 yards, you're in the kill zone within 3 inches at all times.
Yep, that's why I run a 200-yard zero on mine.
But that's why your average hunter likes that, because you're always within 3 inches, which is perfectly acceptable in a kill zone and gives them a little bit more error possibility, and they'll shoot out to 250 yards comfortably. Once they get past that, then you got to start figuring out either adjustments to your scope or bullet drop compensation, and then most hunters don't understand anything past that. They just know set it for 200 and I'm good out to 250. Just aim dead at the animal's kill zone.
What is it? 308, 300 is, I want to say like 12-inch drop between 200 and 300.
What are you shooting? Like 150 grain or 160?
Right now, I've been shooting between 147 and 150. I don't really shoot anything heavier than that, just because I've been shooting FMJ and don't want to.
Right on. Yeah, well, like mine, my 308, and that's the other thing you'll find with rifles. Like I bought a 308, and I think they're 155s. The 155, I think they're 155s. But anyway, the 155 VMAX from Hornady gave me the best grouping. I tried a heavier bullet, and they were all off. You know, and I think people understand that more with the ARs because there's so many AR platforms, and there's so much talk about ARs and the fact of a 1 in 7 you can shoot the heavier bullet, and a 1 in 9 you want to stay with your 55, your 62s, but they don't relate those to precision rifles, or at least the amateur shooter doesn't understand that just because you buy a 308, you know, a Remington 700, doesn't mean it'll shoot any 308 ammo, you know, with the potential for the most accuracy. And so you got to play around with the different bullet weights and find one that shoots the best out of that particular gun. And initially you'll spend some money and some effort figuring it out, because I think I had bought 4 boxes, you know, 4 different bullet weights, and I was getting drastically different groups. And then once I found that 155 grain, I mean, I was shooting 3/4 MOA, and so that's what I stuck with. And another thing to keep in mind that I think is important is once you've sighted your rifle and got your you know, your settings on your scope, you know, either write it down or mark it if you have some way to mark it as a reference. But B, the main thing is to make sure you buy and use that same ammo. I mean, if you go into the range and sight in with 150 grain VMAX, and then you run out, and then you want to go hunting, and you just buy some 168 grain lead soft point to go hunting, well, you're going to be way off. So, and I think a lot of people don't think about that kind of stuff.
Well, why don't you go ahead and lay out things like, you know, you mentioned bullet weight, but there's a lot more than bullet weight. There's bullet type. There's powder, the amount of powder, the type of powder, the manufacturer, all sorts of things like that. What I think what you're trying to say is whatever you should zero it with whatever you intend to hunt with. Don't zero it with one type and then hunt with something else.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or compete with something else.
Do you know what I'm doing right now? I'm weighing powder.
Exactly.
The reason I'm doing that is because I've chosen a cartridge, and I've chosen a bullet, and I've chosen a powder. And I'm changing the amount of powder and then going out and testing it at different powder weights until I find the right powder weight to make this bullet be very accurate. And so the other way to do that, if you're not a loader like me who's done this a lot of times, is you buy a bunch of different boxes of ammunition and take them out, and until you find the one that your gun likes, is what they call it.
Yeah.
And really what you're doing is you're just finding a round that's loaded in a way that the barrel harmonics are minimized. That's what you're really looking for, is good barrel harmonics with a certain bullet.
Yep.
So
like I said, that's important. You know,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of people that buy, you know, and obviously for people that are into shooting and understand the different, you know, all the multiple variables, we can wrap our heads around that. But for the average shooter that buys a gun that's advertised as a 1 MOA gun and buys the nicest scope and has all the fancy, you know, bench rest, but then is still not getting the performance out of the gun that's advertised, you know, that they don't think about the bullets.
And whether it be listening to things online, reading books, going out with a buddy, etc., hopefully that will shorten one's learning curve, but everyone has one, and you never stop really learning because things are always changing.
And Gun Websites just put a link in here to his, I didn't realize, this looks like, I'm going to have to watch this after the chat, but he's got a link in here about sighting or zeroing an AR. So for anyone interested, go check out. It's called AR-15-0 Introduction on gun websites. It looks like pretty legit.
Attempt to clarify breakdown. Concept a lot of people don't get, just by description.
All right.
I'll copy it over to channels unless it's already there.
See, yeah. I just do things the old-fashioned way. I went out and bought 10 boxes of different ammo and see what shot well.
Yeah,
and that's exactly what I did.
And oddly enough, my AR, my 716 there, likes PMC. 716 PMC. Loves it.
I swear by PMC. I love that stuff.
That's nice stuff.
The easiest way to explain it is whenever you pull the trigger and the bullet fires, you're causing an explosion in the chamber, which vibrates the barrel. As the bullet's going down the barrel, it's traveling down a vibrating tube. If the bullet exits at the slow end of the vibration to where the end of the barrel is barely moving, then it's consistent shot to shot. That's why the hotter you get the barrel, your shots go to crap. It's because you're changing the vibration by the heat. So you fire 10 boxes of bullets and you figure out which set of bullets.
I don't mean back to back. I took my time.
Well, yeah, I mean that's the trick is you want to be consistent. But yeah, that when you say my gun likes a certain bullet, you really just by testing found a good one that matches the barrel harmonics to your rifle. Right. And you can have two rifles come off the same assembly line. Each one will like a different bullet.
I have a really good example of that. I have a 716, and my buddy bought a 716. And I was actually showing Stone last week the Federal ammo that I have that I can spin the projectile inside the case. His rifle loves it. My rifle jams up with it, won't feed it, doesn't like to shoot it. It's ridiculous.
Well, what else have we talked about that we haven't covered? So we got into the red dots, scopes. See if I'm looking for any questions here. Bear with me 1 second.
So this target right here, this is 67.5 grains shooting that target, okay? And then this target right here is 66 grains. So not a large difference in grain weight.
Are you talking grains of powder?
Yeah.
What the hell what is that? What are you loading 60 grains in?
Well, I'm loading 66 grains in my 375, silly.
Oh shit! I was about to say, damn, that's a lot of powder, man.
It's got to move. It's got to move a 250 grain round.
He's got a monster rifle.
Anyway, but as you can see, the spread on this is about 3 inches, and the spread on this is about a little over an inch. But again, that's what I'm testing. I'm trying different powder weights, trying to get that group as tight as possible.
I'll have to keep that in mind when I get into reloading and start doing my own stuff.
I can pretty much pick a bullet and a cartridge and a powder, and I'll run through it. And sometimes a powder is just crap and doesn't work. So what I do a lot of times is I ask other reloaders, and they'll typically tell you, oh, for the 7mm mag, load this powder, and for 375, try this powder. So I ask around because I've tried it the old-fashioned way where I was like, I loaded a 7mm mag with this stuff called Rotumbo, which is this high-end safari powder. Could never make it shoot well. Well, it turns up it's like putting super horsepower gasoline in the bullet cartridge. It's too overpowered. So it's designed for like big cartridges, not the 7mm mag.
All right. Well, hell, guys, I think that's I think we're running about an hour. No, not at all. But we're running about an hour and a half, and we've stayed pretty much on topic the whole time. So I think this is a good spot to end it. probably have a lobby chat going on at gunchannels.com. Go over there, check out Gun Channels. I appreciate everybody tuning in this evening, and everybody that came on the panel and joined in and participated. So anyway, thanks again, and maybe we'll continue this type of chat. There's probably more to talk about, so maybe we'll do another one soon. But that's it for tonight, guys. Thanks again.
Just,